Illinois Stories is brought to you by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, Illinois Arts Council Agency, and by the supportive viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello, welcome to Illinois Stories. I'm Mark McDonald in Springfield at the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library. And we have an interesting look back in history for you today. It's not about Abraham Lincoln, but it's about a project here at the library called the Oral History Program. And they have recently concluded their 1,000th interview. And Dr. Mark Depew has conducted those interviews for 16 years, I think we said, something like that.
Well, and, not quite, since 2006.
Since 2006, okay, 14 years. And you reached a milestone, the 1,000th interview. People may recollect that we've done a program about this, and it was about military history. Today's program will be called Illinois Statecraft, and we're looking at Illinois politics, and there's some pretty interesting stuff that you've latched onto.
Well, I think I had to kind of convince you that there was, but I found some good clips.
Sometimes I think there's enough politics, you know what I mean? We don't need any more. But actually, Illinois politics can be very interesting.
Well, and can you think anybody who was more colorful or a more astute politician than Governor Jim Thompson?
Mm-hmm.
And this first clip is going to be talking about the 1982 election against one of the most famous names in Illinois politics, Adlai Stevenson III, who'd recently been a senator, and that was the closest election that the state had ever had. By the time they got done counting votes, there was 1,054 votes that separated things. There's a great story about what happens afterwards, but this particular clip is just talking about what Stevenson thought about Thompson, and you're going to hear Stevenson at the beginning of the clip, and then Thompson gets to respond to what he thinks about Stevenson.
Okay, well, let's take a look.
What I'd like to do next is to play another audio clip from our interview, and obviously, Governor, you've already listened to the interview that I had with Senator Stevenson. This one is about winning was all that counts. What the newspapers were picking up was that these are two people who just don't like each other.
Well, it's certainly, true in my case. I had no respect for him. But I'm a little surprised that I would have been that explicit. He was kind of the antithesis of everything I and my family stood for, and presided over the conversion of Illinois from our politics to his.
How were the two families different?
Well, it's just anything. Winning is all that counts. Governing was what counted in our family. It was, patronage and tactics. He didn't even serve when his time came.
I mentioned you'd heard that before. Governor, we got just a couple of minutes, but I'll let you to respond to his comments.
Well, you can't govern if you don't win. I mean, that's pretty obvious. If you're not first interested in winning so that you're able to govern by taking the political office like governor, you might as well be a political science professor. I mean, come on. Winning is all that counts. Well, that's exactly right. That's the end result of a campaign, and then you go on to govern. That doesn't make any sense to me. He's always repeating the issue of his family. Now, I know he takes a great deal of pride in his family, his grandfather and his father, and they were able men. I was so enamored of his father, I used to carry a picture of his father and me in my wallet. When I was 18 years old and a student at Washington University in St. Louis, his father, in the middle of a campaign, was coming to an area close to there, and I came across the river, and I attended that event, and I asked his father for a picture, and we got it taken. And that was a proud possession of mine as a kid. I thought his father was a great man. But he kept talking about his family during the campaign and what they stood for, which was the complete antithesis of what you stand for, Thompson, as though they were royalty. I mean, and royalty doesn't go very far with the electorate of Illinois. It was just a strange way to conduct himself, or a strange way to speak, as though I'm good and you're evil. And that's the campaign. I mean, it's just, people didn't believe that.
Now, you heard him say that he didn't like you. Now,
Yeah.
maybe that's a bit strong, but how would you feel about him during the midst of the campaign?
Same way. I'm not going to hide it. I didn't like him.
And how about respect? He said he didn't respect you.
Well, I mean, I think that says more about him than it does about me.
Politics has always been mean, right? People aren't nice to each other in politics.
Well, it hasn't changed in a couple hundred years, has it? But I think you can also tell how much fun it is to talk to people like Thompson, and we'll see some of the other people we've had. It was fun to talk to Adlai Stevenson and hear him say firsthand, I won that election in 1982.
And as people get older, they get a lot more frank too, don't they? I mean, they're not really hiding anything, so that gets interesting too.
Governor Edgar gave us a good piece of advice when we first started back in 2006, and that's wait until they're out of the arena. If they're still in the arena, then they're going to couch their comments. And they even do after they're out, but not nearly as much. And people like Thompson and Edgar and a lot of the other folks are pretty darn candid, which I always appreciate.
That same year, 1982, there was another battle being drawn, and that was the fight over the ERA, the Equal Rights Amendment.
Right. And this next clip we've got is from Pauline Kaye. She was a member of this group of radical feminists. I think that would be a fair title. They might even go along with it. The grassroots group of second-class citizens. They came over from Champaign, and they're talking about, Pauline is talking about in this clip, of practicing chaining themselves. They were going to come to Springfield and chain themselves outside the Senate chamber, on the railing outside the Senate chamber, blocking all the senators from getting in. And she's talking about, well, we had to practice it, so we practice it on my refrigerator in my kitchen. Parkland Community College professor, but this is what she's doing in her spare time.
Okay, let's listen.
Were you at the time members of NOW?
I think I might have been a member of NOW, kind of on and off, but I had a sense that they were like too nice and too benign, and we were beyond that. We weren't nice, benign girls, and we were bad girls. I told you that we rehearsed the whole thing here right in my kitchen, because we had to choreograph the whole chaining, because you can imagine we had to sneak in there and then quickly uncover our chains and chain to one another and to the railings. So we used my refrigerator as one of the railings and practiced right here amidst great laughter that whole thing.
Well, how was it that you were chaining yourselves?
We were attached to each other by locks. So that was the difficulty of it, was not only because we were all walking in individually with chains around our waist and a lock. And then as part of the protest, there was a protest there, and so we made our way there, and then we had to quickly chain to each other and someone chaining to the railing on both sides. Once we chained ourselves, we expected to be arrested immediately, and we weren't. They didn't know what to do. They were totally, what are they going to do? And the media was everywhere, the television, Chicago, Springfield, the newspapers. Oh, it was incredible. And so, as it got out, women started coming and joining who weren't on the original planning. We ended up having to spend the night there. They didn't know what to do with us, and so we couldn't leave. But we'd unchain ourselves and go to the bathroom, and food was brought in after the Capitol was closed, and then women would appear, like this woman right here. I can't remember her name.
On the right.
She was from out of town, and she just came, and obviously and this one too. These two right here were not on the original planning thing. And they would just come and they would take our place, so we'd unchain and give them the chains.
Those were turbulent times.
Yeah, they certainly were. That fight occurred for 10 years, really 9 years. The first time in 1972, most people thought it was going to pass. It didn't pass. It surprised almost everybody. But every year after that, they fought over it. And the important thing for me right from the beginning is that, you know, we're going to be objective journalists, kind of like journalists going through here. We don't take sides, but we certainly want and expect the people we interview to take sides. But we get all sides. So I've got almost every different perspective of the ERA fight that you can possibly imagine. And we hope to put that in the book here in the near future.
You know, we looked back at the Thompson-Stevenson race, and we're talking about kind of a nasty race, but in 1990 when Neil Hartigan ran against Jim Edgar, that was a pretty close and a pretty nasty race too. There was a lot of insults being thrown around.
Yeah, and because of that, for both Thompson and Edgar, I wanted to have some video. Most of the interviews were done as audio, but the 1990 election was a great one to talk about on camera. And this particular clip that we're going to watch here is the culminating moment, late into the night, an election night, when Edgar finally finds out he's won.
Sure enough, about a half an hour later, all the networks said, we've taken another look in Illinois, it's been a turnaround, and Edgar, we are declared going to be the winner in Illinois. This is 12:30 or so. And about 1 o'clock, Neil calls and very gracious, concedes. And and we had all these people downstairs and at the Hyatt, you know, and a lot of them are real nervous because they knew if we lost, they probably were going to have to leave the state. Because some of the, as I said, there are a lot of folks in Chicago in the ethnic community that stuck their neck out. I said, all right. I said, let's go down and declare victory. And I said, call down there. And so we come down the elevator and we get on the escalator. The Hyatt, there's a floor above an escalator, then it goes down to the main floor. And of all the moments in politics and government, the high point was when Brenda and I were on top of that escalator looking down, and that place just packed. And it had been packed all night. Nobody had left. And they were just, I mean, they were happier than I was probably because they had won. I mean, as I said, a lot of them had stuck their neck out and everything. And that, coming down that escalator that night was probably the high point as far as just satisfaction and everything. And as I said, you looked at the group behind me, and it looked like the Rainbow Coalition. We had blacks, we had Asian Americans, we had Hispanics. I mean, we had Poles, we had Italians, we had WASP. We might even had a couple Irish back there. It was just packed, and so that was just something. That, and this was probably by this time it was almost 2 o'clock. I don't stay up past midnight, you know, and it was really fun.
A lot of people pine for those days when Jim Edgar was governor because we weren't in terrible debt and things were, the economy was okay and things seemed to be, they didn't spiral out of control yet the way we seem to be always trying to dig our way out from economic problems now.
Do you remember, though, the first year he inherited a $1 billion deficit? And back in those days, in 1990, that was big money, and he was being called Governor No.
That's right.
And Edgar Scissors Hands, because he was cutting.
Yep. I do remember
the fun thing
Governor
about
No.
Edgar, though, the first story he told about politics is the race he ran in second grade. I got all kinds of stories about him. Grade school, junior high, high school, college, he always had politics in his blood.
Yes, he did. He also hired a man named Howard Peters, who served in a number of capacities in his administration, and then went on to do a lot of other great things. And you got a chance to sit down with him, too.
Yeah, we had a lengthy interview, and I decided to do his as a video, in part because of the story we're going to hear. And like I almost always want to do for politicians, for the veterans, those kinds of folks, I want to get the background, you know, their whole story, find out who they were before they got into politics, before they put a uniform on. And here's a perfect example of the benefit of learning about the background of some of the people we talked to. And it's about him in second grade. Let me back up real quick. Why did you have to go to the second grade for the second time?
As I mentioned earlier in the conversation, I learned nothing in the first 2 years of school. I was just disruptive, so much so that when the teacher who was going to fail me or retain me in the second grade learned that she might have to keep me a second year, two teachers actually almost had a fist fight of who was going to take me. And imagine the impact on the psychic of a young boy, even though I may have warranted it. But to know that adults would rather fight than have you in their class.
Were you watching this discussion?
Oh, yes. I was very conscious of it, as were other kids. It was not something that happened, away in some private room. This happened right out in the hallway before children. So I couldn't recite at that time the alphabet from A to Z. I just had not learned anything about school and academics. So my father comes home, and there is a GI Bill that allowed him and my mother to get housing, which was single-family homes in another, segregated neighborhood. So we moved out of the projects into this new neighborhood. And so it meant I had to change schools. And I had the good fortune of going to a school, another segregated school, where the principal of that school, whose name was Goodrich, Isaiah Goodrich, and a second grade teacher whose name was Felton, who had a total different investment and view of children in general and me specifically. Miss Felton said to me one day, early in my tenure at this school, "You can't afford to allow people to think you're stupid." And interestingly enough, I remember that moment emotionally today. It really got my attention because it had never occurred to me that I had any say, any ability to do anything about what people thought of me and whether I was dumb or not dumb. She began the process of creating a student in me.
I worked in the Edgar administration for about 9 years, and I was familiar with Howard Peters because he directed several departments under the Edgar administration. But he did a lot more in his life too than just politics. He is a remarkable man.
He is, and for Edgar, he was the head of the Department of Corrections and really changed dramatically the Department of Corrections culture. And then what he really wanted to do was, I believe, move on to the Department of Family Service or Health Services. Not sure I got the title of that right, but the Human Services. And that was his passion, and that's where he was able to finish his time with the Edgar administration, and again made an impact while he was there. And I think you can see why I wanted to play this clip, why it's one of my favorites.
I love it because it gives us hope that people who seem to be left behind really may not be if they meet that right person.
And teachers ought to love this one, huh?
Oh, I think so. I think every teacher would love to know that they made a difference like that.
You bet.
The next person we're going to meet is the name that I wasn't familiar with. The last name is Minow, which is an unusual name, but tell me a little bit about him.
Newton Minow. He was very well known in the early 1960s because he was President John F. Kennedy's chair of the Federal Communications Commission. And his claim to fame, the reason he shot to such prominence, he was the one that came up with this statement that television is nothing but a vast wasteland.
Oh, everybody's heard that.
Yes, it's a vast wasteland. And as revenge, it's kind of a cute little story. When they made Gilligan's Island, think about what the name of the boat was.
SS Minnow.
The SS Minnow. They named him after Newton Minow. But then he got out of politics. He would work with a lot of campaigns. He would help with presidential debates. And later in his life, he's at Sidley Austin, a major law firm in Chicago, and he has a young woman named Michelle Robinson, I believe, is working at the law firm. And then who shows up as an intern there but young Barack Obama? And that's what this is going to be about.
Okay, let's watch this one.
One night we went to the theater to see Spike Lee's movie, Do the Right Thing. And we ran into Barack and Michelle. They were out on a date. Michelle was extremely embarrassed. She felt that as supervisor of Barack, she shouldn't be socializing or dating him. I could see she was upset. I said, forget it, have a good time, enjoy it. But then Barack left. He came back the next summer. By this time, we knew they were dating. We took them to Ravinia. Ravinia is our outdoor Chicago Symphony Orchestra summer venue where the orchestra and a lot of other entertainment during the summer. We took them there. And we saw each other more that summer. And at the end of the summer, Barack came in to see me, and he said he was leaving. We had offered him a job for the future. He said he couldn't take the job, and I said, why? He said, I'm thinking of going into politics. I said, well, that's good. I said, we like to see talented people go into politics. We'll try to help you. And he said, I don't think you're going to want to help me when I tell you the rest of the story. We were both standing up in my office. And he said, I'd rather you sit down before. And I thought, what the hell is this? So we both sat down. He said, I'm taking Michelle with me. I said, you no good, rotten, worthless piece of it. He said, hold it, we're going to get married. I said, well, that's different.
So Newton lost a good employee, and then he lost one of his, she was an attorney with the firm at the time?
She was an attorney, and he was an intern when all of this was going on.
Well, interesting, that they have lives too, and it's interesting how we all end up where we end up and what we did before.
This was an important relationship for President Obama. Again, he's up and coming. He hasn't even gotten into politics at this time, but Newton Minow ends up being one of the important mentors of his early career, as did Abner Mikva, another very famous name in Illinois politics. And we've got an extensive interview with Abner Mikva as well. And because most of these things that are talking about Barack Obama in Illinois are happening in, it's only a portion of one interview and a half an hour there, we put it all on the same web page so people can find all the material that's really addressing Barack Obama's experiences in Illinois.
We mentioned that you've completed your 1,000th oral history interview. And in many cases, these are not just a sit-down interview. In many cases, you'll go back and you'll interview a person again and again and again. That's how else you end up with 30 hours of material. I mean, this is an ongoing project in many cases, isn't it?
Yeah, and especially for the political figures, people like Admiral Thunman and General Borling, they have long, distinguished careers. A lot of the religious leaders were taking the same approach. And so you go in with the notion that you're going to have several sessions, and really allows you to dive deep. And people are saying, why would anybody want to listen to that many hours of Jim Edgar or Jim Thompson? Well, people like yourself, journalists, researchers, if we make it appropriately accessible and have it indexed or have it all available on the website, they can find that little piece that they want to about the ERA fight in 1982 or the cutback amendment of that time frame or Barack Obama's election in 2004. They can find that piece and really use that material in the way that we always hope that scholars and students and journalists and the general public can find out more about the people, the citizens of Illinois.
Yeah. It's a fascinating program, and it must be a lot of fun for you too. I think I would find it to be. I would like to be able to say, hey, I need about 2 or 3 days of your time.
You and I are doing the same exact thing. You've met some amazing people over your career, and so have I. And the advantage I have, and you just hit on it, is we can really get to know them in depth.
Well, we are very fortunate, you and I, Mark Depew. Thank you for helping us.
Thank you.
Really, this is a tremendous asset that not only we at Illinois Stories have, but you at home have too. Now, anybody who has access to the World Wide Web, of course, can go to www.oralhistories.illinois.gov, and you can see this and 1,000 other interviews, as many as you have time for. With another Illinois Story in Springfield, I'm Mark McDonald. Thanks for watching.
Illinois Stories is brought to you by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, Illinois Arts Council Agency, and by the support of viewers like you. Thank you.